G'day guys, welcome to my Season 3 PvP Best in Slot guide for Rogues. There have been so many amazing changes to Arena, and I know that puts a lot of ambiguity and confusion around what's actually most optimal now for Rogues in Season 3. Season 3 goes over 2 phases, so this list will also include what's good for Phase 3, and then what also is good for Phase 4 as well. I'll also include some optimal builds and then some more realistic builds, as often with BIS lists, what is actually on there is not achievable in 99% of cases. Nobody has the access to all of the best pieces, so I'll just run through what is best and then all the various second BIS options, which there are a lot of. So without any further delay, let's jump straight in. So this is what our BIS list looks like for Phase 3. A lot of really interesting changes have come out in sort of the last week or so. I had actually recorded this video once already, and then we got all those PvP changes. So I decided just to re-record it all and give you guys the most up-to-date information as possible. There's been a lot of discussion about what is BIS, what is good now, what is not good now, what, some of the really big changes with Season 3, no NG belt, no Skull of Impending Doom, which doesn't so much change what we wear, but it also changes the meta dramatically. So we'll discuss that a little bit as well. Obviously, Warglaives are not on this list, but everyone knows that they are amazing, and if you had them, you would definitely be wearing them. But for most people, they're not possible to even get. So starting from top left, we have Cursed Vision of Sargeras. I think probably this isn't a surprise to a lot of people, but it might be a surprise to some. If you have access to Cursed Vision of Sargeras, you'll definitely be wanting to wear it over your Deathblow X11 goggles. The stealth detection with the Deathblow X11 goggles is really strong, don't get me wrong. Openers are still very, very important in Season 3, just as they have been in the past. But the stats gains from Cursed Vision is just insane, particularly if you are playing a healer DPS comp. The only instance in which you could not wear CVOS is if you really, really liked using your death blows or your hypervision, if you're that kind of player, and you're playing a double DPS comp. But in most cases, if you had CVOS, you would wear it. Telonicus, really, really strong still. And, lucky for us, if you still don't have it, you can easily GKP for it now and get it for a fraction of the cost that you would have gotten it before. There is an alternative, which is the Serrated Blades, which is the armor penetration one. Sorry, I don't know why that took so long to load, but this is also a really strong option. But again, I wouldn't put it ahead of Telonicus. If I had both of these, I would be using Telonicus. But again, Choker of Serrated Blades is still a really solid option. Unfortunately, as a rogue in a typical PvE guild with a a loot council, or even if you had DKP, don't spend your DKP on this, and a loot council won't be giving this to you anytime soon. So again, you could be using Telonicus or your Choker of Valentin or your Vindicators if you valued resilience. Standard 4 set, because we are using a PvE helm, we always want to be using all other slots to be hitting our 4 set. The 4 set is the most important thing you can have as a rogue in PvP. Shadowman Destroyer's Drape is the absolute BIS cloak, but I would say it's not meaningfully different from the Thalassian Wilder Cloak. So if you had Thalassian, I wouldn't be putting a huge emphasis on getting Shadowman Destroyer's Drape. But again, this being a BIS list, this is the best option. Next is Insidious Bands. These are really, really strong, and luckily for us, we're quite high prio on these. So if you're in a decent guild, there's a good chance that you can get these quite early. But again, if you didn't have that, you would be using either the PvP braces or Vamp Braces of Ending. There's a lot of talk of the Dragonhide braces being better than the leather braces that we would normally been running in previous seasons and that you would be running in other slots. It's just an interesting sort of tidbit that people have been discussing. The stats overall are better. I won't go into it, but I'm sure there's Discords out there and resources online if you wanted to look into it further. But basically, it's just a net gain over the Vindicators leather braces. PvP weapons are your second BIS option behind Warglaives. If you couldn't hit 1850, you would just be using, probably in order of preference, it would be Rod of the Sun King, Talon of Ashara, and then your Season 2 weapons as your last option. Gloves, again, a no-brainer. The Money Belt is better than Deep Shadows, but again, not leaps and bounds ahead. But for an absolute BIS gear set, the Money Belt is just better. And I will just quickly discuss socket bonuses. I see a lot of people putting heaps of emphasis on hitting every socket bonus. It's just not worth it. 4 stam is not worth the loss of agility that you would get if I did gem, and put a yellow one in here. Again, with the chest piece, 4 critical strike rate, it's like 0.1, 0.2 of a crit. The stat loss that I would get gemming that alternative and gemming for the socket bonus isn't worth it. So just keep in mind when you are gemming not to go full out onto your socket bonuses. The only instance in where I go for a socket bonus if it's agility, if it's resilience, or a lot of attack power. Shadowmaster's boots, these are really, really strong, but again, in a PvE guild, you will not be early prio on these. But again, they are very, very strong. Heaps of attack power, 2 gem slots, and some really good flat stats in agility and stamina. Storm Rage Signet. Surprisingly, we are quite high prio for Storm Rage Signets. I think because we're pretty much last prio on CVOS, we're not going to get Manus of the Betrayer. That in most instances, you're quite high up on this one. The hit rating is just really, really good for rogues. So you'll see a lot of BIS lists and priority lists. This is really high up for rogues. But again, if you weren't hitting Illidan anytime soon, or again, you just didn't get this, you would just be using Ring of Deceitful Intent, which I think drops off a Karma. Ben the Eternal Champion. This is awesome. You love a chance on hit for just some massive amount of attack power. You'll be wearing this for quite a while. And again, you would just get this from Mount Hyjal, just doing it every week, getting the reputation from killing trash and the bosses. You'll get this in no time. But again, if you weren't PvEing, just put in your Garonas, put a PvP ring in if you would like. Medallion of the Horde, still no epic one that comes out in Sunwell, so we're still going to be using Medallion of the Horde. For Phase 3, the figurine of the Nightside Panther is the best. If you weren't a jewel crafter, you would obviously be using your Bloodless Brooch or your Diamog Brew from Brewfest. And obviously, we would also be using the Battlemaster Trinket if you are playing a double DPS comp. I know a lot of Rogue Mage and Rogue Lock teams will really be gunning for this, farming all that honor in the off-season now. I myself will buy this, and I'll just test it out. I play Rogue Lock, so I'll just test it out, see how I like it. It'll take some time getting used to, but I think I will probably be using this up until Phase 4, where then we get Berserker's Call, and it might be a bit of a harder toss-up between the two. But again, double DPS comps, I would definitely have this in your bags, as I would imagine the meta now with no belt, Battlemasters will become very, very important. And just the PvP throwing weapon, the extra resilience is really nice when we're rocking quite a PvE-centric gear set. A little bit of stat stick with some resilience is also very, very nice. Obviously, this is an absolute BIS dream case scenario and probably not going to happen. So if we look at something that's a little bit more realistic, I think this would be something that is quite achievable for a majority of people, taking into account the rating requirements on some of these. But you will notice quite a big difference. No CVOS and no Deathblow X11. If everyone had their way and you didn't particularly put a lot of emphasis on stealth detection or effective stealth level for that matter, I would say this is a really, really strong set. We're still getting our 4 set, which is the most important thing. Always, always, always build your sets around I need 4 set. And with that free slot, we're going to use the Slayer shoulder pads. These are really strong, heaps of attack power, amazing armor penetration, and just lots of really, really nice stats. It's the best PvE option for that 5th slot. G'day guys, quick charity update for everyone. The last charity period has officially ended, and with that I've made a $100 donation on behalf of everyone for all the subs that we gained in that last period. With that, I wanted to also announce our next charity, which is Gamers Outreach. They're a fantastic charity that provide video games for kids in hospitals. So I hope you'll support the channel and support the charity with me. So any new subs that we gain during this period, I'll be making a $1 donation for every new one. Again, thank you all for your support in the last period, and I hope you'll support me on this journey as we continue on. Thank you so much for the support. Again, I couldn't have done it without you guys, and it's so great that you guys are supporting with me. So let's get back to the video. But again, Telonicus and Thalassian, if that wasn't achievable for you, if you don't do any of the phase 2 raids, again, you would just be using your Choker of Vile Intent or your new PvP neck. And if Thalassian wasn't an option, you would just use Drape of the Dark Reavers. I think everyone can probably sneak in a Kara every now and again. Do not buy the Season 1 cloak. I think Blizzard just forgot to add new cloaks every phase. So whatever you do, just don't buy the Season 1 cloak. The stats are just terrible. So you're better off picking up a Dark Reavers as your second best option behind Thalassian. I put Insidious Bands in just because I figure most people and most rogues will be able to get this if they do Black Temple. But again, if that's not achievable, you would just put in your Van Braces of Ending or your PvP Braces. Deep Shadows, you can pick this up so cheap. If your guild's kind enough, you can get a free one probably at this stage. But again, you can pick these up for 500 gold max. I mean, Vortexes are going for 100 gold min bid these days, so Belt of Deep Shadows is well within everyone's reach. And again, I haven't put the soccer bonus here. I know that's contradictory to what I said before, but we don't need the blue gems. This isn't a Relentless Earthstorm Diamond where we need 2 blue gems. We just need the 2 yellows. So again, the stat gain, it's a negative, it's a net loss. So again, we would not be gemming for the soccer bonus and PvP boots. But again, you could just use Master's Treads if you really, really like effective stealth level and you put a lot of emphasis on always getting the opener, that's fine. But again, things like Edgewalkers are also fine. But again, in order of preference, I think it would be Shadow Masters would be BIS, second BIS would be your PvP boots, and that's a really easy slot that you can just tick off. Ring of Deceitful Intent, and these are 2 really standard and achievable for most people. But again, like I said, if you didn't have access to this, what I would do would be, and I wasn't doing tier phase 3 or phase 2 raids, I would just use Garonas and a PvP ring. Again, Figurine is BIS in all scenarios if you are a dual crafter. If you are not a dual crafter, you'll just use, again, a Battle Master or your Bloodlust Brooch or its equivalent. But again, that is phase 3. Any questions about the gearing, the thought process behind it, and maybe some mix and match pieces that you might be able to slot in, chuck them down in the comment section below. We can have a discussion about what's best for your individual scenario, and we can go from there. And there's a lot of confusion with so many options. But again, just make sure that you're looking at this in the lens of I'm raiding with 24 other people. I'm not going to get all the items that I want. What's the best gear set for me, and what items should I prior based on what I have currently? So this is our phase 4 BIS. Not too many changes from our absolute dream case BIS scenario. Phase 4, we might start seeing more upgrades come through for these more contested items as the raid begins to come on farm, and you've seen 4 Shadow Masters boots drop by now, and you're finally in line for the 5th one. The dream case scenario becomes a little bit more achievable the later we get into the phase. This is a very, very long 2 phases and a very long tier. So, very well could see a lot of the items towards the back end of phase 4. But again, we're still using CVOS. The only real change is Berserker's Call. If you are a dual crafter, you will replace this with Berserker's Call. But again, if you're a player that really values effective stealth level and stealth detection, you would be using Figurine, Master's Treads, and Deathblow X11s. But I think that's, for me, that's too much of a net loss in terms of DPS. But again, as a double DPS player, that's less important, and the opener is sort of the most important thing. So make that call dependent on your playstyle. But there are a lot of new options that come with badges and Zul'Aman. So I'll just go through them. Back, Shadowman Destroyer's Drape is obviously the best, but we also get Dory's Embrace, which I believe is 60 badges of justice. Yes, 60 badges, and is really strong. I was even tempted to put this as BIS, but in terms of DPS loss, it's just a little bit too much. But again, if you weren't using a Shadowman Destroyer's Drape, this would be your second BIS, or Thalassian. They're all very close, but if you felt like you were getting trucked by Storm Herald Warriors, maybe by Dory's Embrace to keep it in your back pocket. Just heaps of all the important stats, so you really can't go wrong with it. Shadowmaster's boots, we get Ninja Tabi boots. Again, not as good, but a really easy alternative. Again, 60 badges of justice, so you'll be doing a lot of heroics if you are after this gear. The Money Belt is still best, and Deep Shadow is second BIS, but I would say a third BIS would be your PvP, and if you still couldn't get that, maybe you could put on Shadow Walkers, but again, that's like for your fourth option. If you didn't have a Storm Rage Signet yet, you would be using Signet of Primal Wrath, a very close alternative, just minus the hit rating, so again, not quite as good. And instead of Insidious Bands, you can use the Master Assassin Wrist Wraps, or you can obviously use the PvP alternative. All of these slots have really strong PvP alternatives, so it's always a good idea to pick all of those up for 3-3s, where you would like to be running a little bit more resilience. And then when you get these really strong PvE options, you can slot those in place of that. But as I said, a more realistic Phase 4 option I've put here as well. I will share a public link for this so you can browse at your leisure. But again, we still want to be using those Slayer shoulder pads, just because they are the strongest PvE piece out of all 5 main pieces. But again, if you're not PvPing, you would just wear 5 out of 5 if that's if you're so inclined, or you could just be using your Deathblow and the other 4 sets. We'll quickly go over the chest and the legs, and the helm all have armor penetration, so they're all quite strong. So having all 3 of those is what makes, plus the Slayer shoulders, makes quite a heavy armor pen centric build, which is very strong in PvP. A lot of the healers are getting more and more armor, so you'll find yourself using expose armor, imp expose armor more and more in PvP. So having a flat amount for when imp exposes down, or to put that in conjunction with expose armor, is a very strong thing to do. And if you aren't using expose armor as a rogue in arena, you should definitely start using it, especially when you're training healers. And in healer DPS comps, it's very important to make sure that you are expose armoring for when you have a lot of uptime on healers. Without getting too ahead of myself, again, don't forget, no NG belt this season, so make sure you pick up Battlemaster's Trinket if you are a double DPS player. But that's the list. I've tried to keep it as short as possible. I didn't want to drag this out to 25-30 minute video, because it very well could be, but I think I'll make another video in the next week or so, just going over a lot of the PvP changes and how that will affect your playstyle, sort of the winners and losers from the PvP changes, just so you can keep in mind, what classes are a little bit weaker now, so you can adjust your playstyle accordingly, depending on what comp you play. But thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the list. Again, I will put a link to this 70 upgrades page for you guys to have in your back pocket. Feel free to bookmark it as well. But thank you so much for watching. If you like this kind of content, and if you liked the video, be sure to subscribe. If you didn't know, you're new to the channel, for every new subscriber that I get, I do donate $1 to the chosen charity of the month. So if you'd like to be a part of that, and you'd like to be part of the collective donation I make on behalf of everyone, please consider supporting the channel. But Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.